It wasn't about the money. That's what I kept telling myself, lying awake at 3 a.m., the ghost of my father's disappointment a permanent resident in my bones. It was about the legacy he sweated and bled for. The little empire of brick and mortar he built with hands cracked from labor, meant to be a fortress for his family long after he was gone. But families, I've learned, are the most permeable fortresses of all. The betrayal didn't come from a stranger in a shadowy alley. It came from across the polished mahogany of our mother's dining table, served with a side of expensive Pinot Noir and a smile so cold it could frost hell. My sister Evelyn. The golden child, the savvy one, the one who managed things after Dad's heart attack. She stood there at the reading of the will, his will, the one we all heard him scribble with his own failing hands, and watched, unblinking, as the lawyer declared the trust dissolved, the properties sold, the accounts consolidated and empty. A financial ghost town. My share, my daughter's future, my father's last wish for me, vanished into the elegant void of her offshore portfolios. She patted my hand, her diamonds cutting the air between us. Some investments just don't pan out, little brother. It's a complex world. She thought I was broken. She thought I was Narvi, the soft-hearted son who studied literature and built treehouses instead of fortunes. She believed the narrative she'd crafted, that I was a minor character in her epic. But she was wrong, because a week later, during the brutal, beautiful humiliation of my mother's 70th birthday, I saw the final, cruel proof of what she was. I saw my 11-year-old daughter Lily, her small frame dwarfed by a mountain of untouched food she'd cooked for 3 days, her face crumbling as text after text lit up the phones of 29 no-show guests Evelyn had privately, deliberately, uninvited. I saw the tears she tried to hide in the kitchen, her little apron stained with sauces for a feast of ghosts. And I saw Evelyn's reflection in the black granite of the countertop, a faint, satisfied smirk touching her lips as she comforted our mother with lies about scheduling conflicts. She didn't know. She didn't know I'd left my phone recording in the living room, capturing every whispered conspiracy, every cruel laugh, every admission about the money, the party, the systematic dismantling of my life. The audio crystal clear, a symphony of betrayal. And that was the moment I knew, the real revenge begins now. The rain in New York City that autumn wasn't water, it was a liquid shroud, a billion needle points of cold tapping a requiem against my 5th-floor walk-up window in Astoria. The smell of wet concrete and distant fried food from the diner below seeped through the cracks, a world away from the lavender and Polish scent of Evelyn's Upper East Side penthouse. The recording lived in 3 separate clouds, on an encrypted drive buried in a library book, and in the raw, bleeding center of my chest where my heart used to be. I played it sometimes, not to torture myself, but to fuel the quiet engine that had started turning inside me. My name is Leo Walsh, and for 36 years I existed as a gentleman. I taught high school English, found beauty in sonnets, and believed in the fundamental good of people, a belief my father fostered and my sister exploited. Now, I was a student of a different text Evelyn. I spent weeks in the rain, dappled glow of public library computers, tracing shell companies with names like Atron Holdings and Styx Capital. I sat in coffee shops across from her sleek midtown office tower, watching the doormen hail cabs for men who looked like polished knives. I learned her rhythm, the charities she chaired for show, the discreet restaurant where she met her divorce lawyer, turned lover, the yoga studio that was a front for something else. Something my audio hints suggested involved favors for a city councilman. The inheritance she stole was substantial, but it was a static number. What I needed was the dynamic truth, the pressure points, the hidden architecture of her life. The recording was my Rosetta Stone. In it her voice, like chilled champagne, laid out connections. Tell the councilman the variance will be approved. His donation to the studio sealed it. And her laugh, a sound like breaking crystal, as she told our cousin why she uninvited Lily's guests. Let the little martyr have her moment. Leo needs to understand his place is at the kiddie table, not the boardroom. Besides, mother gets overwhelmed so easily. A quiet dinner is better. Each word was a thread, and I began patiently to pull. The first move wasn't a strike, but a placement. Using a prepaid phone, I sent a single, anonymous line of text to the city councilman's chief of staff, a man named Garrett. Ask Evelyn Walsh about the structural integrity reports for 1245 Riverside. Atron Holdings thanks you. It was a phrase lifted directly from the recording. 2 days later, from my usual spot in the drizzle across from her office, I saw Evelyn exit not just with her assistant, but with Garrett. His face was a tight mask of suppressed fury. Her elegance was strained. The set of her shoulders a degree too high. They argued sotto voce under a black umbrella before she slid into a town car alone. A tiny fissure. I felt nothing resembling triumph, It's only the cold focus of a surgeon making the first incision. The next phase required proximity. I used the last of my legitimate savings, money she'd missed or deemed too paltry to take, to buy a single impeccable suit. I became a ghost in her world. At a gala for the botanical garden she used as a networking pool, I stood in the shadows near a monstrous orchid, watching her work the room. My father's eyes stared back at me from my own gaunt reflection in the night-black window. I wasn't recognized. To her set, I was furniture. I overheard a snippet about a pending merger for a boutique hotel chain she was invested in, Viridian Properties. The recording had a mention of Viridian, and a worried note in Evelyn's voice about fire code anomalies being handled. Back in my apartment, with Lily asleep in the next room, her small face still carrying a sadness that no bedtime story could erase, I cross-referenced everything. Fire anomalies, unsigned integrity reports, a silent partner in Viridian with alleged ties to the Albanian mob. The puzzle was revealing not a picture but a sinkhole. I cultivated a source. Mark, a disgruntled, mid-level asset manager at Evelyn's firm who frequented a specific hole in the Wall Bar in Long Island City. He was a man who felt overlooked, who liked to talk after 3 bourbons. I became Liam, a freelance journalist writing about urban development. Over weeks, I fed him just enough knowledge to earn his trust, and he fed me fragments. The Walsh woman, he slurred one night, she's ice. Cleaver. Though. She's got this side hustle with some city inspectors, greasing wheels for the Viridian deal. Something's off with the foundation of one of the buildings, but the paperwork's pristine. Someone's getting rich making problems disappear. He didn't know he was describing my stolen inheritance being multiplied. The audio recording now had context, a terrifying landscape. This wasn't just theft. It was a cancer of corruption, with my sister as a graceful, smiling carrier. The moral weight of it threatened to crush me. I wasn't a vigilante. I was a teacher who graded papers on The Great Gatsby. Yet, every time I remembered Lily's face that night, the sheer deliberate cruelty of making a child feel insignificant, the weight morphed into something denser, sharper, a weapon I was learning to hold. The escalation came from an unexpected vector: our mother. Evelyn, sensing subtle disturbances in her universe, the councilman's newfound distance, a delayed permit, decided to consolidate her emotional territory. She moved mother, frail and confused, from the family home in Westchester into a luxury assisted living facility in the city, a gilded cage, conveniently emptying the house for a quick, below-market sale to a Viridian Associated shell company. I visited mother in her new solace room. She held my hand, her skin like tissue paper. Evelyn is so efficient, she whispered, her eyes cloudy. She said you've been troubled. That you might say strange things about her. About the money. The psychological warfare was exquisite. My gentle, bookish mother was now a hostage and a propaganda tool. The recording burned in my pocket. I wanted to play it for her then and there, but it would shatter her. Evelyn had calculated that too. So, I changed tactics. I went to the house before the sale finalized. In my old bedroom, behind a loose baseboard where I'd hidden childhood treasures, I found what I'd half hoped, half dreaded: a stack of my father's old engineering notebooks. And tucked within them, a carbon copy of a later, handwritten will notarized but never filed, leaving the house and a separate liquid fund to me and my family, to balance the scales for Leo's heart, and for Evelyn's ambition. He'd known. My father had seen the fracture and tried, too late, to mend it. It was the corroboration I needed. The recording was the voice, this was the signature. The endgame began in a dim, silent parking garage beneath Evelyn's office building. The air smelled of cold oil and loneliness. I intercepted her as she walked toward her Audi, her heels clicking like metronomes in the vast concrete emptiness. She didn't startle. Evelyn never startled. She simply stopped, a mirage of poise in the halogen half-light. "Leo, you look haunted. Are you following me now? Should I call security?" Her voice was exactly as it was on the recording, but now I heard the tiny tremor of control being exerted. I didn't speak. I hit play on my phone. Her own voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the space between us. The trust was a fiction, Mother. Leo would have donated it to save the rainforest or something equally quaint. I've repurposed it. He'll be fine. He prefers his poverty. It gives him something to be poetic about. Then the later clip, about the councilman and the variants. Then the cruel, laughing planning of Lily's party humiliation. I watched the blood drain from her face, leaving a perfectly made-up mask. The silence after the clips ended was absolute, a vacuum. "You pathetic little man," she finally breathed, but the venom was undercut by fear. "You record private conversations. That's inadmissible." "It's not for a court, Evelyn," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's for the Times, for the SEC, for the councilman's opponents, for Viridian's other investors, For every charity board that thinks you're a philanthropist. I have the will, too. Dad's last will. I've already scanned and distributed it to several safe parties with instructions. This was a bluff, but she couldn't risk it. Her eyes, the same shade of blue as mine but infinitely colder,
narrowed. What do you want?
Money. I can give you money. A lot. More than Dad left you. I don't want your money, I said, taking a step closer. I want you to feel two things. First, the same profound, public insignificance you made an 11-year-old girl feel. Second, the loss of everything you built on top of my father's bones. You have 1 week to liquidate every asset tied to Viridian and Atron. You will publicly resign from all your boards, citing personal reasons. You will sign the Westchester house, free and clear, over to me. And you will transfer the full original value of my inheritance, plus 18% annual interest, compound, you understand finance, into a trust for Lily. Then, you will leave the city, you will be quiet. Or the full audio file, the will, my detailed dossier on your fire, code anomalies, and your councilman friend go to 12 different places simultaneously. There is no negotiating. She laughed then, a hollow, desperate sound. You don't have the neuro. You cry at parades. I played one more clip, the one I'd saved. Her voice, conspiratorial to the mob-tied silent partner. If the inspector becomes a problem, we have leverage. His daughter has a drug habit, we can make it worse. Her face went ashen. She hadn't known I had that. It was murder wrapped in a business proposition. A week later, it was done. The financial transfers were verified by a forensic accountant I hired with a small advance from a truly interested journalist. The house was mine. Evelyn's resignation made page 6. The story was a whisper of scandal, but without my evidence to catalyze it, it remained a whisper. She moved to Zurich, a gilded exile. I sold the penthouse she'd left me and used the money, along with Lily's now secure trust, to buy a quiet brownstone in Brooklyn. On a cool, clear evening, with the sky turning the color of a bruise, I lit the fire pit in our small backyard. Lily, flour dusting her nose, brought out a pizza she'd made herself, just for the two of us, and for her grandmother, who now lived with us in a sun-drenched first-floor bedroom. It was a messy, glorious, lopsided pizza. We ate it under the stars, the sounds of our laughter drowning out the ghostly echo of a recording I would never listen to again. The revenge wasn't in the destruction, though destruction had come. It was in the silence I had chosen, the peace I had built from the ruins, and the light returning, day by day, to my daughter's eyes. The tape had been my weapon, but her smile was my victory. The account was settled.